Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar called Maximizing Profitability. My name is Aris Demosthenes. I'll be your host through the entire MSP Business Bootcamp series. Today is webinar number 2 in our first module called the Management Module, where we will be discussing all the areas in your business where we can find profitability, extra margin, and make your business valuation better. I'm joined by Tammy Allen. Tammy has been a senior channel sales representative here for many years and has worked with thousands of MSPs, working one-on-one with the business owners, and has a lot of information that she could help us out with, guys. So please pay attention to Tammy today, and I will turn my attention over to her. Tammy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aris, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Aris mentioned, the topic of today's webinar is maximizing your profitability. We are going to build off of the last webinar, today's successful MSP market programs. So to start off with, we'll do a quick recap of those programs discussed in that webinar. We're then going to turn our attention to the MSP market as a whole and uncover what makes an MSP an attractive target for acquisition and more profitable. Using this as our foundation, we will discuss what levers you can pull in your business to improve your company's efficiency, scalability, and profitability. Even though you may not be looking for an exit strategy, taking control of these things will help your business run smoother and put more money into your pocket. Finally, we're going to look at a spreadsheet that we've created for you and be making it available to all the attendees today. It will take a costing up approach to your programs, helping you understand your profit margins and therefore taking control of your business. And finally, we'll come back to making a couple of recommendations of what you should start thinking about doing immediately to increase your profitability. So let's get started by looking at the market today. Our addressable market can be quite large. The sweet spot for MSPs is typically the sub-100 seat organization, as most of them don't have an IT department or any technical staff. That being said, there are programs that you can absolutely offer to the mid-market customer as well. But for today, let's really focus on the small to medium-sized businesses. These will be our perfect sample customer. Remember, the size of the organization is only an indicator. The real thing that makes them a good fit for services is that they rely on IT to do their day-to-day operations, coupled with a lack of IT knowledge of their company. That makes them the perfect storm for managed services sales. As you may recall from the last webinar, there are 4 distinct levels of service delivery, as seen at the very top of the slide here, where reactive is the lowest level of the MSP maturity and fully managed or fixed fee is the highest. And at each of these levels, MSPs will sell line items that fall into the 5 categories on the left, starting with IT services and working down to professional services. At the reactive level, you're a fee-for-service model, which covers ad hoc, block, or staff services. When supporting your customers in the time-based service delivery model, you're typically supporting whatever software is already there, then waiting for an issue to occur before you can start building. So basically sitting by the phone and waiting for it to ring. The revenue in this model is too unpredictable to be attractive to any potential buyers. And because of this reactive nature, it becomes very difficult to gain any sort of efficiencies within your business. MSPs have recognized that their technical resources are working hard, but not smart, usually only achieving about a 50% utilization rate, which is why the push for managed services happened in the first place. Having a 50% utilization rate means you're only invoicing for half of your total tech time. Your margins are tied directly to your utilization rate and are calculated based on an hourly price versus hourly cost. So the biggest leverage you can pull to increase your margins is to either reduce your labor costs, which is very difficult to say the least, or raise your prices, not something your customers really want to see you do, which means scalability is going to be an issue for a couple of reasons. First, since you're managing a large variety of software systems, you have to be an expert in all of them. This requires a lot of time to maintain that knowledge level and expense in training, which is why standardizing your products and processes to your customer base has a huge effect on your efficiency. Also, there are only so many hours in the day. So if you've been good enough to grow your customer base, your only recourse is to hire another engineer and really hope that your business continues to grow in order to keep him busy. Your gross profitability usually sits at 50% as the work is very manual and unpredictable. So for those reasons, the valuation for MSPs running a reactive time-based model only comes in at about 45 cents on the dollar, as you can see here. A la carte services are a great way to break your customers from a traditional support services and get your customers out of that reactive mindset. This is where you start making reoccurring revenue from your customers you couldn't otherwise sell managed services to. At the same time, this program helps you get your software into their environment and to help you with that scalability and standardization we touched on. Since the line items typically do not include any remediation efforts and the deliverables can be automated, your margins in these programs are usually higher, fetching between 35 and 66 or even better depending on what you're automating. So for little effort, you can get quite profitable programs. Proactive is the first step to true managed service offerings and is likely the most common program offered today, as it really should be. It's at this level we see MSPs starting to sell their value by selling uptime rather than remediation. At its most basic level, this program provides customers with a more stable network through routine maintenance and monitoring, coupled with expedited remediation times. The value to the customer can be shown through a proper ROI exercise quite easily. The value to the MSP, however, is improved margins through automation, usually starting at over 50%, and the reduction to unpredictable labor costs. An efficient and streamlined process will positively impact your bottom line. Because of the higher dollar value and margins associated with this program, you can expect a better business valuation. It is at this level we see gross profit elevated to the 70% area and can get even higher if you're truly leveraging automation. Your tech's utilization rate, it also increases to about 70% plus, which makes you far more attractive to potential buyers. Managed or fixed fee is the highest level of managed services offered. At this level, the MSP basically takes the ownership and therefore the liability of the customer's network. These are the highest priced MSP programs in the market, so that definitely helps with your revenue numbers. And the margins are quite healthy, starting at upwards of 50%, if not much higher. Here we are seeing more structured SLAs with a focus on the client's business. The role of the MSP is far more aligned with the business as the role evolves into that of a true virtual CIO. Though automation is needed along all levels, it's absolutely mandatory to ensuring the success of any fully managed engagement or specialty services offering. This program gets your tech utilization rate to its peak as you complete control of the network because you can manage in the most efficient way possible. A la carte, proactive, and managed are now lumped together for that business valuation, as you can see here. For all the groups measured, this group comes in with the highest valuation last year at $1.36 on the dollar. The business valuation numbers we cited in this section came from a presentation from Paul Dipple from Service Leadership that he did with Channel E2E in January of this year. He puts the best merger and acquisition numbers in our industry yearly, so I really encourage you to check his stuff out. Let's do a quick recap of the average price for the program. For this session, we're focusing on the U.S. market, but we did hand out the average prices for all major markets in the last webinar. So if you didn't receive it, feel free to let us know, and Eris and I will gladly get that to you. I won't go over every line item here, but it's really important to note that these prices are not suggested prices. They are averages based on the entire U.S. market. So some areas will be more expensive than others. So for example, a fully managed server, say in like Manhattan or something, is usually upwards of $500 a month rather than the $250 displayed here. And could go as cheap as $150 a month in some rural areas where the labor cost is less expensive and where the market adoption may be slightly behind. In fact, the average price of $250 is usually added when there are multiple applications on one server to support it, and we've seen as much as $100 per application added to this price. We will maintain the managed server example throughout the presentation here, and we will use these average numbers as our baseline. With all that information revisited, let's start taking a look at what we can do to become more profitable as that MSP. At the highest point, there are two areas you can focus on: increase your price or reduce your cost. There are many areas an MSP can reduce costs, so let's start with increasing price. MSPs tend to immediately think that increasing price is a very bad idea. They say things like, my customers are too price sensitive to increase my price, or that won't work in my area. I bet many of you thought something like that as soon as you saw these words on the screen. But did you know that the MSPs being acquired typically have the most expensive managed services programs in the industry today? They are almost always in the top third of the most expensive services, in fact. And they don't continue to sell on dollars and cents. They sell on value, even in remote areas. The reason for this is that they sell on line items and inclusions. They sell on the end result of their services and the value that they're bringing to the customer. So stop making excuses for your customers before your customers can even say no. The truth is, if you position your services correctly and provide a high value to your customers, they will pay your asking price. So don't be afraid to increase your price. Out of curiosity, how many of you have increased your price in the last year? Click on the button now. Eris, what are you seeing? How many people raised their hand?
Hold on a second. Looks like maybe 20%.
Okay, all right. So what about, say, the last 2 years? How many of you increased your price in, say, the last 2 years? Please click the raise your hand button now.
It doesn't look like it's changed much. I'll say about the same.
Okay, how about longer than that, 5 years or more even?
Yeah, a little bit more here, 25, maybe a little bit more than 25%.
Okay, well, clearly most of you are due for a price increase, and soon. A side note here, be careful not to spoil your customers by over-servicing them. It is typically the same MSPs that are afraid to increase their prices that are really giving away too much. The thought being that you're using that as a differentiator, that these little freebies that you're giving away are because you're small or you need to give them a little bit more. In truth, your customers rarely remember that little 5-minute call that you didn't charge for, but they're really quick to remember when it took you too long to help them with something about a month ago. So don't be afraid to service them professionally and appropriately. Remember, you have the talent that they lack. So document and change and charge them for everything that you do and stop giving away the freebies. Let's see how changing your price impacts your margins. These screenshots are taken from the calculator that we're going to be giving you at the end of the webinar. So as we mentioned, we're going to focus on the managed server here for our example. Here you can see the average price is $250 per month per server. Leaving all the costs alone right now and simply increasing your margin to, say, $300 per month, you can see that your margin increases from 52 to 60%. Price increases are the simplest way to become more profitable. I know it may be a tough pill to swallow, but you seriously need to consider, is this a viable option in order to increase your profitability, especially if you have an end game in mind for your business. If increasing your price by $50 yields an increase of 6 to 8% in your margins, what do you think is going to happen to your margin when you reduce the price the same $50? As you can see here, your margin drops by 12%. So discounting your services as a method of competing with your peers is an unprofitable idea. The race to the bottom only hurts everyone in the industry, and it's the reason that we see this space becoming so commoditized so quickly. and this only hurts all of you. So stop trying to sell on the price and being the cheaper service. Start selling on the value. Now we've seen what increasing your prices can do. Let's take a look at the many ways you can reduce your costs and identify what has the most impact on increasing your margins. There are two main areas in your offering that you can look at reducing price: the software costs incorporated in your program delivery and your human resource time, namely your tech time that you've included in your programs. When looking at reducing HR costs in a program delivery, what we're really looking to do is reduce the manual time spent delivering the promised line item. This can be accomplished by getting either more efficient or faster at the task you're doing manually, or by finding a way to automate that task entirely. Before we investigate cutting your HR costs, let's take a look at how software costs impact your margin. So by applying the same technique that we did in the pricing example previously, let's see what happens once again to the fully managed server when we reduce our software costs. Let's focus in on the monitoring and management agent cost first. If we reduce the cost of the agent from $2.99 to $1, a very large decrease of 66%, the resulting margin turns out to be less than a 1% delta, from 52.34% to 53.13%. This clearly doesn't do much for your profitability and not worth a tool change or battle over a large discount. The note is just too cheap in comparison to the overall program price to make any sort of impact. So let's take a look at the most expensive line item in the software columns, namely the backup in this example. If we keep our agent costs in the same but reduce the backup cost to say $35 per month per node, we see our margin is affected in a more meaningful way. Now our margin increases from 52% to 58%. A 6-point swing in our margins is definitely noteworthy. So when looking at reducing software costs, start with the most expensive components. Now let's turn our attention to the most difficult task of reducing your HR costs. There are two main ways to accomplish this. Either A, you gain efficiency, or B, you automate your workload. In both cases, the goal is simple. Minimize the amount of time your most expensive resource, namely your technicians, take to support your programs. By reducing tech time, you can greatly impact your margins. I'll show you by using the same example as before in just a sec. But before, let's talk about gaining efficiencies in your manual labor. Becoming more efficient at delivering your programs, meaning having a well-defined and repeatable process. Whatever your checklist looks like, you need to document it so that all your technicians can follow it and so that you can measure how the work is getting done properly. This way, the methodology and expectations your technicians have when servicing or supporting a client are clearly defined. This is the only way to improve in this category. Through repetition, you will definitely get faster at it naturally, but you can only start getting repetitive when the exact same action is happening each time. So start documenting those maintenance routines that you do manually and start speeding up that process. You can even accomplish higher speeds at troubleshooting reactive problems through documentation and repetition. Just ask any one of your peers that's running a substantially sized help desk. This is why knowledge-based articles came to be in the first place. Not only do you speed up the fix, you reduce the amount of time your technicians will take entering their tickets, because those repeatable issues can be templated. But you also ensure that the job is being done the same way each time, and that will drastically reduce your research time later if a customer ever questions you. Reducing your ticket time in a manually fully managed service has obviously margin implications, but if you have a minimum charge for your reactive services, you can see an increase in your margins also. Billing in 15-minute increments, for example, and getting your fixed time to the most rudimentary issues down to, say, 10 minutes saves you a great deal. Margin is calculated as price minus cost over price. So if you bill at $100 per hour, just to make the math simple, you charge your customer $25 for a minimum charge. If it takes you the full 15 minutes, your cost, assuming the industry average of $35 per hour fully burdened tech time, is $8.75 rather than that of $5.83 if you could get that time down to 10 minutes. This moves your margins from 65% to just under 77%, which is a 12% increase. That's rather significant. Now let's turn our attention to automation. This seems to be the thing that all MSPs want to do, but never find the time to do it. I'm hoping that after seeing the impact of automation on your margins, you will decide that now is the time to get started. The nice thing about automating your processes is that once you've done it once, it's completely repeatable with every single program sold and in the future. With the right tools, you can accomplish quite a bit towards automation in all three of your key service areas: reactive support, proactive support, and even in project work. With your reactive support, create scripts in your tools for the most common issues that you see, things like stopping and starting a printer service, for example, and have your techs run those scripts rather than fixing the same issue repeatedly. This way, even though you can't really control reactive support, you can absolutely control your process. Even with project work, you can use the tools to automate the deployment of software, for example, and drive home very fruitful margins, charging your customers for the estimated time that it would take to update their accounting software manually, and then automate it and watch your margins go through the roof. The easiest area in your program to deliver, the easiest area in your program delivery, to automate is that routine maintenance. Let's continue with our fully managed server example. Here's a sample of what a typical maintenance routine for a fully managed server with key applications might look like. If you take the time, you can automate all of the highlighted areas here. That amounts to 90% of your routine maintenance. Typically takes upwards of an hour to accomplish, so if you leverage your tools properly, you can bring that tech time down to 6 minutes. I think you will all agree that gaining 54 minutes of tech time per managed server per month can translate into quite a bit of money in your pocket. I'll let you calculate that opportunity cost on your own, but obviously charging for time in your programs and automating it just so you can charge it for elsewhere again is that kind of double dipping that we want to see you do. Let's stay focused on cutting your costs and see what automating your maintenance routines does to your programs specifically. So once again, dealing with a fully managed server, let's see that I've adjusted the preventative maintenance time allotted from 60 minutes to 6 minutes to account for 90% automation. With just that one switch, your margins jump from 52% up to 65%. That is our biggest jump in margin thus far. It's a fantastic 13%. Your tech time represents the single biggest swing in your profitability. Do things right. In other words, get your processes in place, ensure they're repeatable, automate as much as you can, and keep your tech focused on billable activities that can't be automated. And you're sitting pretty. Do things wrong, and you'll likely end up with poorer margins than we started with in each of our examples. Either way, your tech utilization rate is extremely important to your business. So let's take a quick high-level look at what improved utilization rates mean to you. Your utilization rate is defined as a percentage of how much of your available tech time is billable. By leveraging automation to perform routine maintenance included in your managed services programs that have been historically priced based on manual time, you in effect take back that time and give yourself the ability to double dip on your resources. And automating your maintenance routines will mean that you never forget to do it or skip it because you're too busy doing something else. You should see a reduction in reactive work from your contract clients simply by doing this. That, coupled with the fact that the systems you have in place should naturally help speed up your recovery of the reactive tickets you can't avoid, will naturally increase your utilization rate. In the same way, creating a repeatable process to gain efficiencies will also free up more time for you to be billing elsewhere. Keeping your techs busy with billable activities and reducing the amount of time they spend on non-billable activities is the key to gaining a higher utilization rate. It is also the key component to keeping your human resources costs low. Because you don't have to hire another engineer as early as you would have had to if you kept doing things manually, this will have a profound effect on your overall profitability. You can see on the chart here how much of a difference effective tech utilization can have on your profitability. On average, MSPs working in a reactive model will achieve no more than 50% utilization rate, as shown on the top row here. This means that in that model, it's very rare to see an MSP bill for more than half of their available tech time. Leveraging the techniques discussed today to gain 20% on the utilization rate means you have an extra 8 hours per tech per week for you to bill out, since your tech costs do not change. Because you're paying for a full week regardless, right? But you're billing for an extra 16 hours in that week. That's assuming that you actually have 2 technicians here. That's where all this math is coming from. You have made an extra $1,800 a week for your business, as you can see on the second row of this chart. All right, so let's take a quick look at that calculator that we were speaking of. So on the first page of the calculator here, this is our instructions tab, and you can use this as we're going through the calculator as a whole to help guide you with the questions you may have. We're only going to go through a few of the tabs and the cells on the next page here. So as you can see here, as I'm going through this, there's different sections that relate to each one of the tabs at the bottom. There's a line card, a selection, and a quote tab. And within the instruction tab here, it tells you what each one of the cells represents and how you can adjust it or alter it. So simply by clicking on the plus signs or the minus signs to squinch it up a bit, you can adjust things accordingly. So going into the line card here, what we're looking at is specifically starting at the very top here. Anything that is gray can be adjusted. So we start at the top under the average labor cost fully burdened. What we're talking about here is your cost per technician. How much do you pay them? What is their price that you are on an hourly rate, right? So including things like vacation, sickness, maybe 401k. What we're not talking about here is your total cost of ownership. That's where you as an MSP should take into consideration what is your acceptable margins. So what is your acceptable margin for profitability? So if we look over here under the last column, which is the margin column, column R, you'll see things that vary from 92% margin down to 37% margin. And what is an acceptable area of profitability for you? And as we mentioned earlier, we are looking at this in US dollars, but if you are in a different geo and you have other currency, we have adjusted this so you can quickly click on the appropriate currency. So again, staying at the top of the spreadsheet here, if we look at columns C through I, this is software costs. So this is any software costs that you may have or any software that you may be using to support your current customer base. And then columns I through M is the amount of time to support said piece of software. We have already pre-templated this with a number of costs in here, but as you can see down here, there is other columns that you can adjust or add in other products or adjust your pricing according to the product that you're using today. Then once we get under column P, that is your price. That is what you are going to charge your customers as you go to market. So what is your MSRP? So still focusing on the fully managed server that we had as our example throughout the program here, if we look at adjusting the price down to $1 for your cost of your software agent, as you can see, the amount of margin does not adjust very drastically. So if we keep this at $2.99, you'll see it's only about a 1% change. But as we reflected earlier, the backup, for example, if we bring that down to $35, that 52% margin goes up to 58%. That's a fairly significant jump in profitability. But once we look at this area here, the biggest impact is the automation of your manual tasks. So if we can drop the preventative maintenance down to, as we looked at earlier, say 6 minutes, the margins go up massively. So once again, encouraging you to leverage your software to ensure that you're automating as much as possible. And then if we were to adjust our go-to-market price to say $300, once again, we have a very successful or high margin of 75, almost 76%. So once we standardize this sheet to whatever your costs are and your go-to-market programs are and your pricing is going to be, it's once we do that, we go underneath the selection tab, and it is here that we can start to choose the different programs. So for example, if we look at a typical small to medium-sized business having 2 servers, 2 network devices, and 20 workstations, based on the inclusions that we have for what we consider a managed server, a managed network, and a managed workstation, we can then go into the quoting tool, and we have a nice little quote here that you can put in your logo, your company name, who this quote was prepared for, and over here on the right-hand side, which is for internal use only, we can see what our margins are. We can see how much time it's going to take to support said devices. And down here we can put in discounts, whether they be a dollar discount. So if we wanted to reduce this by, say, $20, which would then reflect over here underneath the quote. And then if we wanted to put in the applicable taxes, that would then reflect over here under the quote as well. And this side over here is obviously the quote that you can provide to your customer. All right, so heading on to the closing out this webinar today, we've reviewed different things you can change to increase your margins and therefore positively affect your profitability. The 2 main levers you can pull are either increasing your price or reducing your cost. The easiest method for increasing your profitability comes with increasing your price. It is something most of you don't think you can do, but you really can. We have profitable MSPs in major cities and in rural areas, so don't make excuses for your customers. Don't pre-object for them. Sell them on the value of your services, and you'll be able to sell them on a higher price. The other area you can leverage to increase your profitability was cutting costs. We noticed that when changing your software costs, your margins were only noticeably affected when you started to target your most expensive software. So don't take up too much time looking for a dollar here and a dollar there. It needs to be significant dollar value, not necessarily percentage, in order for you to really have an impact on your margins. We also recognize that creating a repeatable process and standardizing your workflow will help you become more efficient and therefore have a positive impact on your margins. But the biggest cost saver for you comes in the form of automating, getting your software that you already pay for and you accounted for in your costs to do the work for your technicians that they are doing manually. This yields one of the biggest swings in margin. So do yourself a favor and start automating whatever you can today. Take the time to do this so you'll have more time in the long run. You are not replacing your techs by doing this. You're simply making sure the work that they're doing is billable. And let's be honest, technicians don't really look forward to doing that maintenance work anyway. They really like figuring out the hard problems and resolving the real issues. So take the maintenance work out of their hands and automate it. Your techs will thank you, your margins will thank you, your pocket will thank you. And I thank you for coming today. So, Eris, do we have any questions?
We do. Okay, so first question was, he saw a slide that you showed that had a sample checklist of maintenance and how much we could automate. He was wondering if we actually have a list of things that can be automated?
Well, within our products, we absolutely have a templated of automation checklist work that's already templated in there. However, we do recommend, as we suggested right here, that anything that you're doing today, you should be documenting that process. You should be building that out already and templating that so it is a repeatable process for your techs to follow. There is a number of best practices that you can get from the actual devices themselves that are recommended as preventative maintenance checklist work, but absolutely we do have them within our organization to provide to our partners.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation scripts already created in the products, guys, that you can leverage. And anything that might not be there already because of, we've only added the most common things that we see, can be recreated. The products have a drag and drop interface for creating scripts, so you guys can create whatever you might be missing. Next question. Who was it that had that M&A info again?
It was Paul Dipple. Paul Dipple. We definitely recommend that you check out his stuff. Really great information for any MSPs out there. A lot of stuff is available. Just search it on Google, YouTube, that sort of thing. There's a lot of really good information that he puts out to the marketplace on I think almost a quarterly basis, I believe.
Well, I think he does an annual account with channel E2E.
Yep.
But yeah, his organization, Service Leadership, you can look him up. By all means, guys, definitely look at what he's doing. He has more information than just the general business valuation info as well.
He just put out regular articles.
We also got the normals, hey, can we have the slides and when is the calculator being made available?
Yes, this was recorded and it will be made available to you. Our marketing team is going to obviously clean up a few of my stutters and such things. So we will we'll clean this up and we'll have this sent out to everybody who has registered and attended today.
Yeah, usually within 2 weeks, guys, we'll post it online and marketing will send out an email with a link to that recording, and we'll also have a link to where to download that calculator to answer the next question that's coming as well. Now, what happens, as you showed us in the Prezo, what happens when we automate our maintenance on the managed program? Somebody caught that you mentioned the proactive being the most popular program. Can you show them quickly what margins might look like if we automated the proactive
Absolutely.
In the same 90%?
Let me get the calculator back up here, and let's go into the line card underneath the proactive server right here. If we were reducing this down to, say, 6 minutes itself or even less.
90% would be 3?
Yeah. So just 6 minutes, just for safety.
Sure.
That the margins even go up in that case to 92%. So definitely an impact on all levels of support and services if you can automate and streamline that. So even just like Eric said, if we go down to 3 minutes, that's 94% margin right here, as you can see. So a lot of opportunity to automate, and I'm sure some of you are thinking, what about network devices and workstations, et cetera? As well, we have automation templates for those products or devices as well, and we can actually automate up to 100% of a preventative maintenance checklist work for a workstation. So even if we got that down to say 1 minute of time for a workstation, look at the margins on that. Again, for a fully managed one, the margins jump up to almost 60%. So significant impact to all device levels if you can automate just the basic stuff. And as we mentioned in the webinar, the stuff that a technician really doesn't want to do, cleaning up temp files, like getting rid of the cookies, those types of things. No technician really wants to spend the manual time doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, and when it comes to automation, guys, look to do it from wherever you can. I mean, we focus today on maintenance because maintenance is obviously the one thing you have the most control over. But the truth is you can automate fixes. Tammy talked about it today in the webinar. If you are going to automate fixes, she did warn you to make sure that you have a minimum charge. You don't want to cannibalize your revenue by speeding up fix and not charging for the time you would have. So either A, have a minimum charge of, like Tammy did today, I think it was 15 minutes.
15 minutes,
She used an example of $100 an hour, so $25 minimum charge. So do that. If you automate there, she showed you how you can get wins there. There's also in the a la carte program in the calculator, you'll notice a line item for service desk management, which is a flat fee for help desk, which is assuming a certain amount of time per month per desktop. Doing that is another way that you can automate using the tools that you already have and not cannibalizing your revenue on remediation. Okay, so by all means, look for wherever you can automate. And I think the other big thing Tammy told you was, for goodness sake, think about increasing your price. It's been a long time, as we noticed. So by all means, please do that. Those two things, and just those two things alone will make you guys way more profitable, way more attractive for purchase, or the other way around, put more money in your pocket to purchase if you guys wanted to grow the other way, okay? We want to thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure being in front of you guys. Webinar 3 will be coming out March the 7th. It'll be building your sales process, your MSP sales process. And we'll have David Weeks, who's been with us for a very long time and one of the channel leaders in the space, discussing those types of things, mainly what has the MSP sales process evolved from and to, what kinds of things should you be thinking about putting in your sales process. So by all means, please join us on March the 7th, and we'll go over that together. I want to thank you personally. Again, this is Eris. I'll be hosting all of these webinars moving forward. I will also be, at some point, creating a 1-hour question and answer period, which we will be advertising probably at or before a big brand launch of all of this. And so I'll be available to answer questions on a weekly basis in that office hours type of engagement as well. So have a great day. Thank you again. We will be sending out an email in the next couple of weeks with a link to this webinar and the deliverable, being the calculator. If you need anything, by all means, email Tammy. I think her email address might be up on the screen right now.
Yeah, there we go. Back again.
Or email me as well. All right, have a great day, and thanks again for attending.
Thank you.